Robert A. Heinlein is considered one of the all-time greats of science fiction. He produced such classics as Starship Troopers, Stranger in a Strange Land, The Rolling Stones, Red Planet, and then had a stroke and wrote a bunch of perverted, dirty crap. Oh yeah, and you thought 50 Shades of Grey was something new. Anyway, Heinlein was known for his rather juvenile stories about space heroes fighting space monsters in the future. You thought I was going to say space, didn't you? While these stories certainly helped pay the bills, he was always dissatisfied with them and wanted to branch out into more adult and literary science fiction. Sci-fi wasn't very respected back then, so he took great risks trying to appeal to a mainstream audience. He really broke into it in the late 50s and early 60s, but not for lack of trying. Way back in 1938, he wrote a novel called For Us the Living, which dealt with many adult themes in a way that hadn't been done back then. It was rejected for a number of reasons and never saw the light of day until 2003. Yeah, almost 2 decades after the man was dead and gone. The book sucks. Like, hardcore. I don't think this is necessarily Heinlein's fault, as the book comes off as very incomplete. It's clearly a half-written first draft. One of the characters' backstory is revealed through a footnote. I couldn't believe it myself. Still, it should give you an interesting look into the writing process, seeing how a novel would progress over time. So what's it about? There's a guy who wakes up in the future. No real explanation, just one day he finds himself about to freeze to death on a mountaintop, and he's rescued by a beautiful, naked woman. Good to see the past wasn't without its perversions. This was one of Heinlein's many themes, envisioning a sexually free society. It just goes to show how his stroke wasn't the only reason Lazarus Long existed. The rest of the novel is about our hero interacting with the world of the future and allowing himself to be studied as a kind of living artifact as they look into the past. This would all be much better if it was genuinely interesting. The story consists of long, drawn-out dialogues wherein they discuss the economics of the future and how those economics work, followed by more long, drawn-out dialogues critiquing then modern life and all the social ills of the day, like Isaac Asimov bad. I gotta say, a lot of their problems in 38 were very similar to those of today. There's even an old man in the future who complains that this country is going to hell. I like to point out how things haven't changed. Also, it has a kind of funny future history. Remember, this was written before World War II, so they talk about Hitler, Mussolini, and everyone else like they're not threats and they wouldn't do anything. This is especially funny to me, as Jack London said something similar about World War I. Like I said, the book has several huge passages dedicated to the economic reforms that Heinlein theorized about. Heinlein had once run for mayor, and so had his mind on political and social issues from a very early start. He of course goes into various future technologies and how they work, like personal helicopters and rocket ships to the moon. Oh yeah, and he didn't think we would reach the moon until 2086. I'm curious to think how his perspective changed as the future raged on, as Hitler attacked and we did reach the moon, not to mention the communist scares of the 50s and 60s. I wonder if that's why he never revisited this story and just buried it under a pile of junk. It's interesting to me how things would have changed if he had published this novel first. Would he have broken into the early markets and found a bigger audience? If he did, what other novels would he have written or not have written? Would we have better books from him, books of equal quality, or a bunch of tripe? What if it hadn't been successful? Would he have been discouraged from writing and we wouldn't have the stories we do today? Would someone else have just come up with the same things? I guess I shouldn't think about it too much. When you start to contemplate the multiverse, your brain starts to fragment. Oh well, this book is at least worth looking at, if for no other reason than its unique place in science fiction history. A psychotronic history.